Welcome to this edition of AFMC.
I'll tell you how I got better. I'm
glad to be here.
But a mission to
Delivery of. Well, I think that we're going to talk about everybody's.
Arkansas is the second highest prescriber.
Welcome to AFMCTV. I'm Robin Ledbetter. Thank you for joining us. Today I have with me Jessie Wilson. She is Vice President of Client Engagement for Dale Carnegie Training of the Mid-South. Jessie, thanks for being here.
Thank you so much, Robin. It's so good to be invited and to be here with you.
Well, we're talking about intentionality in a healthcare setting, but what does that mean in terms of for the office and for the culture?
So when you think about intentionality, Robin, I mean, this is something that I think we're going to see more and more. That we're in a time where people have choices, patients have choices. And so in order to keep and retain our patients, we've got to do things intentionally. So intentionality looks like from the beginning when a patient walks into your office, what are they seeing? How are they being greeted? How are they going through, here's what's going to happen? In essence, in business, we call it an agenda, but what can I be prepared for? And if we can start that from the beginning all the way to the very end of their visit, then that will signal to them, to the patient, that this is different and they feel cared for.
And that's not just with the healthcare provider. I mean, that includes the staff, right?
Yes, it includes the staff. So it goes from, I think about passing the baton. So if we are able to, let's just say you and I, we walk in to the physician's office and maybe we are going through a routine visit and we're going to get our annual physical. We go in. There's certain expectations that a patient has. That expectation is that they are going to be seen by the doctor, that they're going to, have the items done by the nurse, and they're going to go through that because they realize it's something I'm used to. So from the beginning, when the office staff greets them, and naturally, as we know this, patients show up with, we don't know what happened 5 minutes ago. We don't know the phone call they just had. We don't know the day they are having. And so when our office staff greets them, makes them feel important, tells them, okay, so we have you checked in, or if you could, here's this iPad to fill out all the key details. And then if you could give that back to me, that would secure your check-in. I think there's a lot of times there's missing pieces. So if we can really make that clear in our communication and to let our patients know, here's that process. Once they hand that iPad back, then we let them know the next phase. So it's in the key aspect when what they'll find out is if the office staff let the nurses know or let the next person who's going to be with them, hey, Jessie's coming in and Jessie just seems not herself today. Jessie just, whatever it may be, any type of thing. Or maybe I just said that I had this life event happen and they make a note of it. And then that gets passed to the nurse and the nurse talks about that. And then after that nurse, between the doctor and the nurse, maybe put a sticky note. And that sticky note goes to the doctor to let them know, hey, Jessie just had this life event. And it just makes that patient feel important across the board. And if that communication, if we think about communication as truly a cycle, that it doesn't start and end in a certain point, but that it constantly flows. And then that's going to signal to the patient that their facility is different. Their experience is different.
And post-COVID protocols really have changed the climate of an office too. when we were talking about what protocol looks like, handing them an iPad, and the patient sit down and fill it out, and there's not as much rapport back and forth like there was. Do you think that is there a level of empathy that can be missed in that regard?
Oh, I definitely think. And I think that goes back to helping each person. If we think about this and within each of if I'm a physician and I have my whole team, does my team fully understand what their role is and how they play a part in the bigger picture? So say that I am in the front. And I call that like the first line of defense. They're in the first line of defense. They are the welcome mat, you could say, of the physician's office. And so within that aspect, I think within the pandemic, it became more of a, hey, here's this, and then you'll give that back to me. And there was less of like, well, how are you doing? What brings you here today? Like all the little things that really make an impact for others, because we don't know, like I said, we don't know what's happened to them. And we all come in with our own emotions. And so sometimes somebody, just a simple smile and, hey, we are so glad that you're here. Thanks for seeing us. It looks like it's been a little over a year, so you're probably here for your routine visit. Going from that, just that, it makes it feel different. And so I do believe that during the pandemic, we became more transactional than relational. And if we can go back to, here's your role in this role, and it giving them a fine reputation to live up to, that you set the stage and you set the scene for the whole experience. And because I believe with how our first interactions really can level set how the rest of the reactions are going to be. Because say that it's more cold in the beginning, then naturally I'm probably going to be more mindful when I'm going to be checking my watch. When do I actually go back? And there's going to be each of those. Rather, I'm probably going to give more grace if I feel like you have my back.
So does telehealth play a role in this?
It does. I believe that within the pandemic, that it really did help us to work smarter. And telehealth is one of the most innovative things that we can do because it provided the services, it provided those a resource where those who they can't spend the time. Maybe it's their work or their schedule that they can't be in the doctor's office. So it provides that. But I do think the challenge there is it can feel transactional. It can feel that I think a lot of us, we become screen fatigued. And in that screen fatigues, we're next to someone, maybe they're on virtual meetings on a daily basis, and now they're talking to their doctor on a screen. And so sometimes what we could miss if we treat that as simply the next patient, it can cause the level of trust to decrease. It can cause, like, I really want to ask this, but I'm not sure if I should. And so I believe that as a doctor, as a physician, and throughout that whole process, that we've got to build rapport even more. And especially with telehealth, as we know within virtual meetings, our energy level has to be way higher. So whether I am that nurse or the physician, typically you hear like to mirror, how your patient is, and from that. But we need to have a little bit more energy, because if we set the tone of that telehealth, and it's in that way, it can just impact that whole experience on how they feel within that.
What are some immediate things that a physician should do when they walk into the door with a patient?
Yes. So I believe, if we can go through, if within that, if each person can help one another throughout the process. So if they had that sticky note that said, hey, this is what's going on with Jessie, or here's something good to know. That's I can appreciate, even though I'm not a physician or in that field, that you're moving from you're closing one door with one patient and you're opening up another door with another patient. And sometimes it can feel toward the end of the day, or maybe you had a rough patient, it can feel exhausting. They like that, all the energy sucking. And so what I would encourage is that the second they open that door, they start a new day per se. So whatever was just in that, with that last patient, whether good or bad, that they are setting the stage clean for this next patient, because it's a mindset shift. Because if we're setting the tone as a physician, and if we were to say, hey, how are you doing? It's within our energy, within the way we greet people, it sets the tone. So we say, hey, how are you doing? Like, even just our tone of voice, our facial expressions can either bring energy into the room or suck the energy out of it. And knowing that they are probably exhausted, I mean, from just the hours and all of that, it's a shift in saying, I realize that each patient has a choice, and I'm going to choose to be the physician that makes my patients feel important. And so even though I'm not feeling like having the energy, and I maybe not feeling my 100% best, I am going to show up for this 10 to 15 minutes with more energy, because they deserve that. And I believe if they did that, and they truly, I think, just in any type of interaction, that we talk about this in some of our trainings, that if to build a connection with another person, we have got to think about that other person. And typically what happens is, if I'm thinking about me, and maybe Robin, you're thinking about you, and none of us, like, if we're not thinking about one another, then it may not build a connection. So because it's within that, so we've got to recognize that as a physician, they're entering into your home, your space. How can we demonstrate that they are welcome at that table? How do we demonstrate? And that's part of saying that energy level. Hey, how are you doing? I noticed that it's been a while since you've been here. What's going on? And, or maybe we go, maybe it's better if we had some structure. So we say, see that you're here for your annual physical. So that we can go through just what this all looks like. We're going to do this, this, and this. And then if you have any questions, then we can discuss those. And if that's something I can address now, I will. And if not, we can schedule something else. How's that sound? And then it's almost like it helps them to know, where are we going? Because I believe within the physician field, sometimes it's, if I am a patient, I may not know what's next. I may not know why we do certain things. And so if we can, as physicians, in a way, break down that communication of what that looks like, that in turn is going to seem different.
It's also important to understand the cultures of those, of who the patient is, right? And so, like, their socioeconomic environment, those all matter.
They do. And that is where we've got to, and I think that's the key challenge, is that, we think about, there is the knowledge base of being a physician and having our skills, but there's also, we're in the people business too. And within that people side of things demonstrates, and it signals to them, okay, how could you be feeling? What, like, based on their appearance and what they're saying and looking, it's like connecting puzzle pieces. All of us we're like layers of onions. And some of us, we show different layers. And it is helpful when we can recognize that let's say if somebody shows up, let's say that a patient shows up and they're highly negative, and or maybe they're highly depressed, or it's almost like the high highs and the low lows, and it may not be during that time that you address that, but being conscious of how do I need to communicate with you to calm you down in a way. So sometimes there can be anxiety with just going to the doctor. Maybe there is like how I'm feeling with, the thing that I may be in like I may have put this doctor's appointment, but maybe I just had a really bad conversation with my boss. And so then now I'm here and I'm feeling stressed that I don't know if I have this time that I can take off. So then I'm going to demonstrate something different. I think that we've got to definitely recognize and protect our own cultures, but recognize others' cultures and what can we do to help that environment.
And before we close, tell me a little bit about the importance of knowing your team and understanding our own strengths and why that matters.
Yes, it is. It is so important because if we think about this, people do not leave jobs, they leave people. And if we can recognize who's on our team, what strengths they bring to the table, how we can best utilize them, then that can really set up just how they view their role and make them feel valuable. So for example, let's say that I am a physician and I'm not really good at demonstrating empathy when I'm having to give difficult news to a patient. But I do know that one of my team members is really good at that, is really good at comforting situations. So what I would do is I would recognize this is not my strong suit. So I would then pass the baton to that person on my team. I would say, I know this is a lot to process. We're going to give you a little bit of time. And then here in a moment, one of our team members is going to come in here. And then if there's any questions that you can think of between now and then, she would be more than happy to ask or to help you with that. And so that's that key aspect of knowing my own strengths, but also knowing my team. Now you have just elevated that team member to make them feel important and feel valued, that they are part of something bigger. And it demonstrates humility as well.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Jessie, thank you for this information. I think that it's super helpful to a healthcare provider, practice management, even in a business setting, it all together is so important. Thank you.
You're so welcome. Thank you so much for having me. And this is definitely within the space that I'm honored to get to talk about this.
Well, that's it for this episode of AFMC TV. I'm Robin Ledbetter. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.